an update on Australian gas reservation. We've obviously talked about that a lot.
Yeah, well, I think we're going to get there. The signs are good. The premiers, the Dunciad premiers, as I was forced to christen them this week, are locked in negotiations with the federal government over, what price to set the caps at for gas and coal versus compensation for lost royalties. The Fed is flush. The federal government is flush with money because commodity prices have been so high, especially for coal. And so they have the wherewithal to share some compensation with the states. I therefore think that they will get there. There's a whole lot of theatre and grandstanding going on between the feds and the premiers, who frankly are saying some really stupid shit, especially in Queensland, where you have Anastasia Palaszczuk saying we have to protect the government-owned generators who are making a fortune because they're recycling those profits as energy subsidies for households, when in fact the federal government is saying, well, you won't need them because we'll lower the prices. So that's absurd. But it looks like we'll get there. And if we do, at the mooted prices of $13 gas, $125 for coal, then that will end the energy shock. Basically, it will more or less already flowed through.
For Australia, David.
Certainly in Queensland and New South Wales, it will have. State governments are offering various subsidies elsewhere that mean those prices haven't thrown through. So they may actually still see a few price rises, but they'll be relatively small, and it will pretty much end the influence on the CPI and the RBA if it gets done. And so we will have dodged a bullet dodged a bazooka really, because if it was allowed to run and, current global energy prices were allowed to filter back to Australia, we'd be looking at, 9 to 12% added to the CPI over the next 2 years, catastrophic interest rates, crashing house prices, blah, blah, blah. So I think we'll get there. And as I mentioned earlier, electricity futures are really starting to fall. And, that's a good sign that the market, is coming to the view that this deal's going to get done. So it's pretty good news. The only caveat to it is that, in the last quarter, these extraordinary energy war profiteers, foreign-owned, sucked out the equivalent of 6% of Australian GDP in income, meaning, our energy exports were making us fantastically poorer, which is obviously a stupid circumstance. But what it also shows you is that there's an unbelievable amount of profits here that we're not getting our fair share of as Australians because we own the resources. It is one thing, an essential thing for us to stop punishing ourselves for exporting those resources, which I think we will get to, where Labor won't go to actually recoup, a fair share of those profits for Australians. And we are talking, 6% of GDP. We're talking an enormous amount of money that the budget could get for various services for Australians that we won't get. There's no discussion to take us there, unfortunately. But at this stage, because Australia is such a, disastrous policy context, it's a big win not to shoot ourselves in the head.